Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I rise tonight to pay tribute to an amazing Territorian, Chris Nathanael. It's a great honour to pay homage to this incredible man, someone who embodied the true term true Territorian and who gave so much to our community. Christopher Nathanael was born in Cyprus on the 17th of October 1942. He told the ABC's Matt Brand on the Country Hour that he grafted his first tree at 9 years old in Cyprus, a mulberry tree, Madam Speaker, and his effort to copy his father. So even at such a young age, he was a very keen green thumb, and we know the legacy of his grafting is famous right across the territory. I myself bought one of his very special and prized black fig trees that he grafted onto territory stock and have enjoyed more than a decade of beautiful figs, thanks to Chris, Madam Speaker. Chris's family came to Australia in 1950, and though initially he wanted to go to Geelong College, he ended up at Collingwood Tech. He believed he may have started earlier in horticulture had he gone to Geelong. Chris moved to Darwin in 1962, married, had 2 kids, Jocelyn and Philip, worked hard, contributed to his community in various ways, from politics to service clubs, and in his words, never lost sight of the fact that I love to grow things. After Cyclone Tracy, he didn't want to live in suburbia anymore, and so the family moved to Bees Creek, and it was there that his love of cultivating, creating, growing was realised on a much larger scale. Madam Speaker, it was hard work, but nothing that Chris wasn't used to, and he and his family steadily built Tropiculture Australia to become a world-renowned tropical breeding nursery and orchard. Chris became an expert tropical horticulturalist and one of the Territory's most beloved local legends. From his use of old fish and chip oil as a plant fertiliser ingredient, which really, really stank, it was really stinky. We used to buy it too. It was his best concoction ever, but it wasn't great to be around. To his crossbreeding and his use of heavy rootstocks to adapt citrus to local conditions, Chris had the determination and the creativity with his passion to absolutely match it. Chris and Tropiculture's innovations have been widely recognised, including a namesake, the Nathanael clone, a thornless kaffir lime tree which is known and grown throughout the industry here, interstate and overseas. And he knew his trees, Madam Speaker. I went to visit Chris when he was in palliative care, and he had a huge basket of fruits and different things in front of him, and I was trying to explain to him something about a particular leaf I'd noticed in our backyard, and anyway we ended up in quite the debate around whether I was right or wrong. I knew I was wrong, because if he said I was wrong, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm out of my depth here, Madam Speaker. But he absolutely just had this encyclopedic knowledge about tropical fruit, and I certainly wasn't pulling the wool over his eyes even in those last few weeks, Madam Speaker. Chris laughingly called himself a bit of a fruit tree hugger. There you go, member for Nightcliff, and the fruits of his passion are proof of his dedication. Tropiculture became a supplier to retailers across WA, Queensland and New South Wales, and were recognised as a centre of agricultural innovation. The farm has also hosted Gardening Australia and Landline, and popular chef Adam Liao and actor Paul Mercurio, as well as the ABC's Country Hour, have been frequent visitors out at Tropiculture. As Chris reminisced with host Matt Brand earlier this year, any new ABC horticultural reporter started off with a walk through the orchard, and that was the best local education they could have gotten. Chris was also a very regular contributor to ABC Local Radio on the Saturday Morning Garden segment. I think we all have spent time listening to him on that show. He was popular, he was respected, and he was mischievous. As one-time host Paul Dale told Matt Brand, I'm still laughing when Chris turned up at the Saturday gardening show on World Naked Gardening Day wearing only a local tropical leaf that was not quite providing adequate coverage. Probably the former member and speaker 𝙏𝙈𝙈𝙋𝙎 𝙭might have been celebrating. She used to like World Naked Gardening Day as well. Chris went on to explain, well, it was natural that you stripped down whether it was walking into the ABC or in your own garden. It was World Naked Gardening Day. So I decided I'd pick 2 leaves, one for the front part and one for the back. But let me tell you, it's not funny to have fig leaves on your tender parts, let me tell you. I itched for 2 days later. So I do not recommend fig leaves on the naked body, particularly the vital parts. Madam Speaker, Chris's advice on anything to do with tropical gardening is acknowledged by all and invaluable, and I certainly went to him with many photos of different things on my leaves or fruits and seeds that I didn't know what they were, whether it was our rambutans or anything else in the garden. He knew it all. And he was always available for people. I think that was the most incredible thing about Chris, is despite running an incredibly successful operation and undertaking his research and development and all of the other things he was involved in, he had time for anyone that walked through the gate or picked up the phone to talk to him. It didn't matter whether you were a novice or an expert or a commercial grower or a home gardener or anybody. He would spend the time that needed to be spent bringing you up to speed, which with me, I never got there, but he tried very, very hard, Madam Speaker. He was a very, very generous man, known for his love of sharing his knowledge as well as his produce, and I don't think anyone could visit Tropiculture without having to try the beautiful array of fruit that he would have there, and we used to enjoy bringing the kids down and getting them to sample some of the amazing fruits that he was growing. The Fong Lim family fondly remember Chris dropping off his latest mangoes for them to try in years gone by, and it was his way of thanking them after being given a cutting from their elephant tusk mango tree. Chris continued the deliveries year after year, delicious varieties, some commercial, some not, but always delivered to Norma and her girls with a "just thought you might like to try these." So many of the tributes about Chris speak of his patient and generous nature. His tips were gospel among gardeners, experienced and novice alike. Madam Speaker, as Ali Hayward, dedicated staffer at Tropiculture Australia, said to Matt Bram, "Chris's legacy lives on in the backyards of so many people. We all carry that wonderful knowledge that he instilled on us." He shamelessly promoted local and native plants and deservedly won acclamations, included being named by Good Food magazine as one of Australia's top 30 producers and given the mantle of Godfather of Tropical Fruit, which is very cool indeed. Madam Speaker, it wasn't just his horticultural prowess that has been recognised. Chris's service to the Royal Darwin Show saw him named Senior Steward of the Year, and he remained active in many local community organisations, and including had an enormous role to play in the church at Bees Creek. But of course, his name is synonymous with his extraordinary pioneering efforts in tropical horticulture. And I think it's safe to say that he was one of the first to start the education of the Southerners about mangoes. As he told it, Tropiculture started sending mango gift boxes interstate more than 30 years ago when the fruit was little known or even little appreciated. He said, "When we first started sending them, we kept getting phone calls saying, 'Hey, are these pawpaws? Or how do you eat these?'" He said. You can just imagine. Madam Speaker, by the time Chris Nathanael passed away in June, Tropiculture Australia was host to more than 400 varieties of plants, including 27 types of mangoes, 27 varieties of banana and countless citrus and a burgeoning variety of avocados. Chris was also very heavily involved in the Country Liberal Party, and I have a lot to thank Chris for. He supported me even I'd say before day one. He was part of the pre-selection panel that picked me to run for the seat of Drysdale back in 2012, and I can tell you, Jocelyn and Philip and family, he never let me forget that. Not for one day, not for one moment. Every time I saw him, he'd say, "You know, I was on your pre-selection panel." I said, "Yes, Chris, I remember. Thank you." And he just can, his contribution to the party was so profound. He was obviously honoured with honorary life membership as well, which I think speaks volumes. And I was just reflecting with Jocelyn earlier, the countless hours over the last 40 plus years that he must have contributed is truly profound, and we thank him very much on behalf of the party as well for everything he's done. I know he was really proud to see us win government in August last year, and he was also really thrilled to be able to vote at the last federal election, which is the last time I saw him, and it was really, really good to see him, being engaged and passionate about something right to the very, very end. He was an incredible person, and I just think you've never ever met someone who had a bad or ill word to say about Chris, and that's because you couldn't. He was generous, he was kind, he was thoughtful, he was inquisitive, he was passionate, he was just engaged in so many different facets of Northern Territory life and the Northern Territory community. And so to Jocelyn and Philip and your families and your friends and party members who are here tonight, I just want to express our sincerest and most heartfelt condolences to all of you. It was a beautiful service at Bees Creek, and I know Chris will be thrilled that we're recognising his contribution to the Northern Territory this evening. So on behalf of our government, thank you for giving us the honour of recognising his lifelong contribution and legacy. He will never be forgotten. And to end with a classic quote from Chris, which was again from Country Hour, "Keep growing, please."
Member for Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise tonight to pay tribute to an extraordinary Territorian, Chris Nathanael. I'd like to acknowledge Chris's family here tonight in the gallery and thank them for coming. I had an opportunity to catch up with them earlier upstairs and have a chat and talk about things that all rural, because I've also been in the rural area my whole life as well. We know that Chris and his family established the nursery Tropico almost 50 years ago in Bees Creek. And Madam Speaker, about 25 years ago, my brother came home with a whole ute load of citrus trees. And I said, "Pete, what are you doing with them?" He goes, "I'm growing an orchard." And it turns out that he went out there and got them from that farm, and we planted them, we dug holes, and it turns out that my brother wasn't quite a green thumb. And they did last for a number of years. So it just shows the sort of person who, he was instilling what he knew on my brother and our family. We had an orchard at our house for many years. He's also a friend of my father, and they're both proud members of the rural area, and we spent a lot of time doing a lot of things in the rural area. They were both heavily involved in the Fred's Pass show, and they worked hard in all sorts of things across the rural area. And Chris was especially invested in the paddock to plate, but between them and all the oldies who in the rural area for a long time, I think they tried their hands at many different things, and they all worked together because back in those days the roads were still dirt, there wasn't any buses out there, and the only real school was Timimon High School and also Howard Springs Primary School, where I went, and also Jocelyn went out there as well. It's nice to look back and think about when I was talking about this, about the memories of being to the shows, and I remember my dad and Chris doing things together and always running around and just being rural people, being involved in the community. And I think at some stage, I think that may be lost in some of the younger generation, some of the Zoomers that you were speaking about earlier. I Googled it. So it just shows that, that's the sort of person he was, Madam Speaker, always involved, always doing something. And Madam Speaker, I've been to the Fred's Pass show for as long as I can remember, and it won't be the same without him. Chris's family and what he did for the show will always be remembered in my heart, because I've lost track of how many times I've been to that show. And also the Darwin show as well. I've been there many times. I've taken my horses there, and when you've got horses at the show, you spend a lot of time there looking after them, and you get time to wander around, and you go to see all sorts of things in the show that you don't normally see if you're just rushing there and rushing going. Chris was passionate about horticulture. He was passionate about the community, the school and the community gardens. He just put back into the community so much, and that's what I remember growing up in the rural area, of all the things that he would do, and with my father and the whole group of people at Henry and Walker. There's a whole group of people doing all sorts of things out there at those days. So he worked tirelessly to develop new cultures, and as the Chief Minister spoke about, there's all sorts of different things. And I remember the orchard, there was stuff that I've never even seen before in my life, and we're trying to grow it, and it's just really instills on me what sort of person he was, helping out all the time. And trying to help my brother is very difficult. His focus and research and innovation and dedication to his nursery, it was really a hub of agriculture and innovation, and he was trying different things. And again, the Chief Minister spoke about that. He was breeding the thorns out of the varieties of the citrus trees. We all know what the thorns are about like. So it just shows he was always trying something new, and I think innovation from people like that is important to the rural area, because I think it shows into the church, into Fred's Pass, and some of the community events that have happened at Fred's Pass for year after year is about that innovation that some of those old people, and I say old people because they're older than me, and I'm pretty old myself, not the Zoomers, have really tried to work hard. So I just want to say thank you for the time he put in and all the work, and I don't think it'll ever be forgotten. And just finally, I went to the funeral service, and it was really great to go there in a place that he designed, built and funded. He was involved in all of that. So I think that was very special for me, as a very special service, along with the Chief Minister and also the member for Goyder and the member for 𝙏𝙈𝙈𝙋𝙎, we went there, and it was just touching to go and hear the stories and see the old people that I've seen around. As I was growing up out there, they were all there, and I had a chat to a few of them. So thank you for doing the service out there. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Member for Goyder.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to acknowledge the passing of Chris Nathanael and to pay my respects. Chris was born on the 17th of October 1942 and passed away earlier this year on the 1st of June 2025. In order to ensure that the details of his life are documented for future generations to see, I seek leave to table two documents: Chris Nathanael's service booklet and a copy of the eulogy delivered by his daughter Jocelyn at his funeral, so that they can be preserved for future generations to look back on.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted.
Thank you. I note that the service booklet and his funeral service was all determined and curated by Chris according to his wishes. It was held at the Anglican Church of the Good Shepherd in Fred's Pass, a church which Chris was instrumental in the design, fundraising and building of. When I attended his funeral, it was incredible to see just how many lives this man had impacted. There were hundreds of Territorians there, the car park was full, and so was half of Fred's Pass. Joining me was the member for Wanguri, the Deputy Chief Minister, the member for Nelson, the Chief Minister, the member for Spilett, and the former member for Goyder, 𝙏𝙈𝙈𝙀𝙎𝙏𝙎. Madam Speaker, I was only lucky enough to meet and talk to Chris a handful of times, but I always heard his wisdom and I took his advice. A memory that will stick with me until the day I die is when I popped out to Tropiculture for what I believe was Chris's last visit to his beloved farm, where he hosted friends and family for one last hurrah. Chris at this stage was in a wheelchair, and despite fighting for strength, the first thing he did when he saw me was to begin fussing about getting me something to eat and something to drink. He had no regard for his own struggles. He offered me some fruit that I've never seen before and I've never seen since, but it was delicious. Chris was an incredibly generous man, and I know that he's found his peace. Since his passing, the more research I have done and the more people I've talked to about Chris, the more I've been impressed with the legacy he leaves behind and the impact he had on so many lives in the rural area. He was not only a pioneer of the tropical fruits horticulture in the NT that we've heard about today, he was a proud father, grandfather and great-grandfather. And I acknowledge in the gallery today the presence of his friends and family. On the 14th of May 2014, the former member for Port Darwin, John Elfrink, spoke to this chamber about the life of Chris's late wife, Christine Nathanael, who passed earlier that year. He said, "It is important in this House from time to time that we place on the record the Northern Territory's gratitude to citizens who have made such a substantial contribution to the community in which we live. The Northern Territory is a lesser place for the passing of Christine." Madam Speaker, I can confidently say that the Northern Territory is a lesser place for the passing of Chris Nathanael. He was a great man who gave so much of his life to making the Northern Territory a better place and the world a better place. We have lost one of the greats. He threw himself into community service the moment he moved to Darwin when he was about 20 years old, and joined organisations such as Keep Australia Beautiful Council, the YMCA Board, the Junior Chamber of Commerce, then known as the Darwin JCs, and at the age of just 27, Chris was elected as a Darwin City Alderman in 1969 and served until 1972. After the destruction of their house in Perat by Cyclone Tracy in 1974, Chris and his wife Pamela built a never-to-be-destroyed house out of concrete and steel in the rural area on Horn Road in Bees Creek. Initially accessible only by driving off the two-lane Stewart Highway, over the Sattler World War II airstrip and down a corrugated one-lane dirt track, they moved out of town and into Bees Creek in 1975-76 and have been a pillar of the rural community ever since. Later in Chris's life, he was active in many community organisations such as the Darwin Sailing Club, the Beekeepers Association, the Anglican Parish, Southern Districts Football and Cricket Clubs, Bees Creek Volunteer Fire Brigade, Midman Community Library, Camilda College Board, and was the Foundation Chairman of the Rare Fruits Council. I want to finish this speech by reading some of the comments that I've seen about Chris's passing, which shows the tremendous reach that he had in his life. Michelle Neal said, "A vast library of knowledge he has taken with him. Knowledge that has paved the way for horticulture in the Northern Territory. He will be dearly missed by all. Condolence to friends and family." Day Sharrock said, "Farewell to one of nature's true gentlemen. So kind and generous with his knowledge, he lives on in people's hearts and the many happy memories he created." Tanil Probert said, "Rest in peace, Chris. Our condolences to his family and staff. Our kids loved visiting on the weekends, learning and tasting so many new beautiful fruits. Thank you for all your contributions to the community." Ari Wheeler said, "Another good person has passed. Thank you, Chris, for making our life better. We always enjoyed chatting with you. We will remember you and your generosity to share your knowledge and friendship." Digby Hart described Chris as a true gentleman, a lovely man who I first met at the Christchurch Cathedral about 4 days after I arrived from England 61 years ago, if his memory serves him right. Anna Beacom said, "Such a loss to the family and friends and the entire Darwin community. He is and will be remembered so fondly by so many." Jane Follett said, "Condolence to Chris's family and friends. He was a wealth of knowledge and will be missed greatly." Lucy Murrell said, "Oh dear, Chris. He was very good to myself and my son Hugo. We had many good times at St. Fred's. May Chris be at rest and rise in glory." Doreen Dyer said, "What a great man he was. So knowledgeable, humble and kind. We'll miss seeing him at Tropiculture and everywhere associated with fruit plants. Condolence to Chris's family and work colleagues. The world is a better place for having known him." Prue Robick said, "Such a really lovely man, a great Territorian whose love of tropical fruit was known worldwide. Heartfelt sympathy to the family and friends." Kylie Scott remarked, "Such a beautiful soul. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and for feeding my Garcinia addiction. Every time I eat them, I'll think of you. Our thoughts, love and prayers to Phil and all the family." Cindy Ryan said that the Territory has lost a true tropical horticultural legend in Chris. He'll be very much missed. Bion Watchop said, "Rest in peace, Chris. Thank you for all your advice over the years and you'll be missed. However, your legacy lives on in the soils of this beautiful place that you helped create." There was more than 200 comments on these Facebook posts acknowledging Chris's passing, Madam Speaker, and it was a common theme that although he may no longer be with us, he is still in our gardens, he is still in the different fruit varieties and the love of all tropical fruit that he helped inspire in so many people. So from the people of Goyder, I want to express my deepest sympathies to his family and all that knew him. Rest in peace, Chris. You were one of the greats.
Member for Wanguri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to place on the record my condolences on the passing of Mr. Christopher Nathanael, also known to many as Chris, and to my own family as Papa Chris or Poppy Chris. A man whose life and work transformed horticulture, strengthened our communities and enriched the culture and spiritual fabric of the Northern Territory. I've known Chris and his family for over 40 years, and to us he is Papa, which means father. Chris was born in the village of 𝙏𝙈𝙈𝙋𝙎 in Cyprus on the 17th of October 1942 and passed away peacefully in Darwin, Northern Territory, earlier this year on the 1st of June 2025. Chris was best known as the founder and owner of Tropiculture Australia in Bees Creek. Through that venture, he pioneered research and development into rare and exotic fruits. Where many said it could not be done, Chris proved otherwise. He found ways to adapt fruit trees from around the world to our unique soils and climate, and doing so, what was possible for growers and gardeners across the top end. His legacy is not just in the plants that now thrive here, but in the knowledge he shared so freely. He became known to many in the horticultural world as the godfather of rare and tropical fruits. It was a title given not lightly, but out of deep respect for his pioneering work, his encyclopedic knowledge and the generosity with which he shared it. For countless gardeners, farmers and researchers, Chris was the person to turn to for advice, guidance or simply inspiration to try something new. Madam Speaker, he was a true territory entrepreneur, establishing businesses that always tied back to his deep passion for plants, sustainability and community. His work helped lay a foundation for future generations of growers who will continue to benefit from his innovation and perseverance. Madam Speaker, many Territorians will also remember Chris's warm, practical voice on the ABC radio every Saturday morning, and often I would be out and about with my husband listening to that, and a regular on the Country Hour with Matt Brand. Week after week, he filled gardening questions with patience and humour, inspiring listeners and giving confidence to beginners and experts alike. As the cost of living pressures began to creep into households in the Territory and across Australia, people began to look to growing their own food sources in their backyards, and many inquired about edible tropical fruits through Tropiculture Australia. Each plant came with instructions so that you could get the best harvest in our climate conditions. If you visited Tropiculture on their Saturday mornings, Chris was there to give you that advice directly. Madam Speaker, over the years, I've purchased a number of my fruit trees from Tropiculture, knowing they would also be disease-free and not having a green thumb like my mum, who's also here in the chamber this evening, often needed the extra advice. But 20 years ago, this month, my husband and I bought our first house, and one of our first housewarming gifts was from Chris. It was a thornless kaffir lime tree, which we planted in a large pot out the front of our house. My husband wanted to plant it in the ground, but I said to him that if we decided to move, we'd have to take the tree with us, hence planting it in the pot. Madam Speaker, our backyard is a mini orchard in which we have 7 different banana varieties, 4 different mangoes, chico, black sapote, 3 different jackfruits, 2 different kaffir limes, dwarf Fiji apple, starfruit, 2 different limes and a Maya lemon tree. All of these from Tropiculture. Now, Madam Speaker, most of these trees bear fruit, and sometimes in excess, and is shared amongst our family, friends and neighbours, and if we can get to them before the bats and possums. Madam Speaker, Chris's contributions extended well beyond horticulture. Chris was a man of deep faith and an active member of the Anglican Church and the Diocese of the Northern Territory. He gave tirelessly to his church community, most notably through his efforts to help establishing St Fred's Anglican Church at Fred's Pass. That church is more than just a place of worship. It is a symbol of his vision of fellowship, service and community spirit. The congregation, including Chris and his late wife Christine, worshipped there in the rector's carport, and from there it was known as St Fred's of the Carport. It became a popular place to worship, and a decision to build the current church was born. Chris was instrumental in design, build and funding of the church, and also known as the church with no walls, to encapsulate the unique Territory way of worshipping. It took a lot of fundraising, and Chris convinced the banks to back them in, and the church would provide a space not only for the worshippers but also the rural community. Chris would donate a lot of his produce to fundraise. Madam Speaker, not only was Chris a long-term member of the Fred's Pass Parish, but he was a much-loved stall holder at the Fred's Pass Show and the Royal Darwin Show. Chris was a familiar and much-loved presence. His stalls were not just about selling plants, they were about sharing advice, swapping stories and sparking enthusiasm in young and old alike. Many of us know people whose gardens today bear fruit because of his patience in guidance and encouragement at those shows. His absence this year was felt deeply as the long-standing corner in the horticultural shed at the Darwin Show was missing his smiling face. And in fact, Madam Speaker, when I went through the shed, they had a picture of him up to remind people of Chris. It was a wonderful tribute to see him. Madam Speaker, Chris was also a proud life member of the Country Liberal Party, and some of the members are here today who knew him. Madam Speaker, it was Chris who I took advice to run in this last election, and it was Chris who in his frail state sat in the sun for several hours with me on election day and handed out how to vote cards so that it can see the CLP take government again once more. And Madam Speaker, on the 15th of October 2024, 2 days before Chris's 82nd birthday, he sat proudly behind me on this chamber floor as part of my family to see me sworn in as the new member for Wanguri in the 15th Assembly of the Northern Territory. He believed passionately in the future of the Northern Territory and the opportunities that exist here, particularly in horticulture and agriculture. He often spoke of the potential of our land, our climate and our people to build sustainable industries that could not only feed the Territory but make us leaders in tropical agriculture. His advocacy reflected his lifelong commitment to seeing the Territory prosper. In reflecting on Chris's life, we saw a man of remarkable generosity, innovation and service. He was a horticulture pioneer, a community educator, a man of faith and, above all, a Territorian who gave more than he took. His passing leaves a gap that will be deeply felt by his family, his church, his customers, and indeed by all who had the privilege of learning from him. On behalf of this Assembly, I extend our heartfelt condolences to his loved ones, especially his daughter Jocelyn Nathanael Walter and her husband Dylan Walters, his son Philip Nathanael and his partner Michelle Hampton, his granddaughter Shayla Nathanael and her partner Mick Sharp, his grandson Wade Nathanael and his wife Emily, and also Ambry Hampton. May they take comfort in knowing his contribution to the Northern Territory was profound and will not be forgotten. The family will know that I mean when I say this. They'll actually know I will miss him saying to me, "Now listen." Every conversation always had advice that made us better people and better growers. Madam Speaker, I also take this opportunity to recommend that in future for consideration that the Street Names Committee consider naming a street in his honour, ideally in the rural area that he called home, and lined with fruit trees that reflect the very essence of his life's work. Such a memorial would serve as a living reminder of his passion and inspiration for future generations. Madam Speaker, Papa Chris has left a permanent mark on the Territory, and may his remarkable human be remembered for his contributions to the Territory. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's a real privilege to make a contribution to this Parliament to honour the extraordinary life of Mr Chris Nathanael. And I welcome the family and friends of Chris who are here in the gallery to hear these contributions. I want to share with you some memories of Chris, memories that come from a dear friend of Chris, Mrs Suzanne Kavanagh, who knew him through the CLP and remained close to him for over 25 years. Her story with Chris begins in 1987. That year, Chris was elected Treasurer of the Country Liberal Party, while Suzanne was working at the Secretariat as the Office Manager. And before that, Chris had been the Chairman of the 𝙏𝙈𝙈𝙋𝙎 branch, which was the only rural branch at the time, and Suzanne was also a member. Suzanne remembers Chris as a man of ideas and energy. As Treasurer, he introduced the concept of a financial life membership. He'd researched it thoroughly, he'd prepared a proposal, and he took it to the Central Council meeting in November 1987. Chris was excited because for him, it wasn't just about a membership type, it was about making a lifelong commitment to a party that he loved. He even had a plan. After presenting his idea to the meeting, he would proudly place his $500 on the table and declare that he would become Financial Life Member number 1. But that moment didn't quite unfold as he had imagined, because sitting in the room was Mr Paul Slotzowski from the Gulf Peninsula branch, and before Chris could get to his finale, Paul Slots, that's right, jumped to his feet, slapped down the $500 and loudly announced that he would be Financial Life Member number 1. But Chris didn't miss a beat. he slapped down his own $500 and declared just as strongly, "And I will be number 2. And so, of course, Chris would have loved to have held that number 1 ticket as that financial member, lifetime member. And Suzanne said that she saw straight away that something even more important than being number 1. The fact that Chris's instinct, his first instinct, was to put the Country Liberal Party first, and he never let his pride get in the way of progress. He laughed about that particular story for years and years, and he was right that Paul's enthusiasm, who did get the number 1 ticket, would encourage others to sign up too, and it did. That same year, 1987, also brought the strong, stable, independent election, as Suzanne described. And Suzanne and Chris worked closely with John Hare and Colin Curnow. And it was an exhausting campaign, but on the night before the election, they'd all been out to dinner with their partners at a Chinese restaurant in the Jape building on Kavanagh Street. And Suzanne remembers how tired and anxious they were all sitting around this table, until Chris, in his own way, lightened the mood. He suddenly stood up and announced he had something very important to share. And then he began singing and dancing to the Pepsi-Dough toothpaste jingle from television. And Madam Speaker, I don't know that ad, but the way in which this was told to me and the way that I hear that it gets told over and over, apparently it's a pretty funny thing. Everyone at that table was completely stunned, but also delighted. And they even demanded an encore. And of course, Chris happily obliged. And soon the entire restaurant was applauding. And that exactly was Chris. He knew when the tension was heavy, and he knew how to ease it. He had a knack for making people laugh, even in the most serious of times. Beyond his humour and energy, Chris was also deeply committed to getting things done. And Suzanne recalls his passion for education. Time and time again, she heard him raise the importance of the Taminman High School at the meetings that they all attended, and he was relentless in his advocacy and never ever gave up on it. And today, that school stands as a testament to his determination. And of course, we've heard from a number of members tonight the contributions to so many different organisations and causes that he championed. When Suzanne reflects on Chris's life, she sees his fingerprints on countless successes, especially across the rural area of Darwin. He was not only a man who recognised what needed to be done, but also put in the work to make it happen. Those are Suzanne's memories, and I know they resonate with many of us across the Northern Territory. They paint a picture of Chris as a man of ideas, humour and conviction, someone who lifted others up, who always put the greater good ahead of himself, and whose legacy lives on in the work he championed. And this is the Chris that we all honour today. Madam Speaker, from a personal point of view, Chris was one of those people who would just pop up everywhere. Whether it was at the Palmerston markets on a Friday night, whether I was out shopping with my boys, or the Darwin show, the Fred's Pass show, he just happened to be at all of these places. And one thing was absolutely for sure with Chris, and that was he was always smiling. He was always incredibly positive. Often he'd come past the Palmerston markets, and like others have talked about, he brought these fruits, and I'd be looking at them thinking, I don't know what that is, but sure, thank you, I'll take the fruit. And then I'd take it home to my boys, and my boys would say, what's that? It's like, oh, let's try it, it's from Chris. And we did, and of course, like others have said, it was delicious. I still don't know what they were, but they were very nice. A bit like the member for Goyder. And I'll always remember that generosity and his desire to teach others about horticulture and about fruits. So I think that's absolutely amazing. And I have to mention, in the lead up to the 2024 election, he was so proud of all of the candidates who were selected for each seat. And he'd come by the markets not long after most of the other candidates were selected. And he said, and I don't want to highlight anyone in particular, but he actually said that Ollie Carlson, he was just so proud that she had been pre-selected by the Country Liberal Party, and I didn't realise how close that Chris and the family and Ollie and her family were to each other, but I did know after that, that night when he was literally beaming from ear to ear about how proud he was that his dear Ollie Carlson had been pre-selected, and of course, you know, she went on to win, and she's sitting right here in the chamber with us and absolutely contributing to the Northern Territory as well as Chris has. So to Chris's family, to his friends, to the party members that are here, you know, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for allowing us and the honour to be able to share some of those memories, not only our own memories, but others that, you know, shared them with us to share here. So rest in peace, Chris Nathanael. You will be absolutely missed.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise today to pay tribute to the life of Mr Chris Nathanael and to extend condolences on behalf of my Territory Labor team to his family, friends and loved ones. As we've heard, Chris sadly passed away on the 1st of June this year at nearly 82 years of age, the same age as my dad. He leaves behind a remarkable legacy of service, generosity and community spirit. Born in the village of 𝙒𝙈𝙈𝙋𝙎 in Cyprus in 1942, Chris migrated with his family to Melbourne as a young boy. At the age of 20, he made his way to the great north of Darwin, beginning a career as a radio announcer at 8DN, and like so many who came here many years ago, Chris quickly made the Territory his home. He was a man who believed deeply in community. His contributions stretched across decades, across countless organisations, some which we've heard already this evening. They're very impressive, the contributions he made with Keep Australia Beautiful Council, the YMCA Board, the Rare Fruits Council, the Darwin Sailing Club, the Beekeepers Association, the Anglican Parish, local football and cricket clubs, the Bees Creek Volunteer Fire Brigade, the Taminman Community Library, the Camilda College Board, and the Royal Darwin Show and Fred's Past Show Societies, where he was recognised in the Royal Darwin Show in 2019 as Chief Minister's Senior Steward of the Year. This extraordinary life, Madam Speaker, is not just a record of service. It is a reflection of Chris's character. He never stood back. He gave his time, energy and love, knowledge and strength to support those around him and improve the Northern Territory. Chris's life was also defined by his family. He married Pamela, and together they raised their two children, Jocelyn and Philip. In 1972, the family bought land in Bees Creek, as the member for Goyder has mentioned, moving there full-time after Cyclone Tracy. In 1988, Chris remarried to Christine, and his family grew, including his son-in-law, Dylan, his grandson, Wade, and Wade's wife, Emily, and his great-grandson, Noah. For all of his public service, Chris was first and foremost a family man. Those who knew him speak of his warmth, his humour, and his generosity. He was proud of his family, and he took joy in seeing them grow across the generations. As we've heard and we know very well, Chris founded Tropiculture Australia, reflecting his lifelong love of plants, growing and cultivating. In many ways, that was Chris himself, someone who nurtured, someone who believed in growth, someone who built lasting roots here in the Territory. Tonight, as we reflect on his life, we recognise not only what he gave, but in which the spirit he gave it. Mr. Chris Nathanael was a man of service, of kindness and of community. His passing is a loss to the Territory, but his legacy will endure in the organisations which he strengthened, nurtured and loved, in the people that he mentored, and the friends and family who loved him dearly. On behalf of our Labor opposition, I extend our condolences to Jocelyn and Philip and your family, and to the many family and friends and loved ones who are mourning Mr. Nathanael's passing. On a personal note, on behalf of my father, Uibo, sincere condolences to the family. My dad, Mick, and my mother, who passed away just 4 years ago, knew Chris for nearly 35 years plus. and they have high regard for him, and particularly the work that they did together, that Chris did together with my mum in the Christchurch. Chris represented the very best of the Territory spirit, resilience, generosity, and someone who was committed to building something better for the next generation. His memory will continue to inspire all of us who call the Territory home. May he rest in peace.
On behalf of all the members of the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly, I extend my sincere condolences to the friends and family of Chris Nathanael. And for those of you who were able to join us this evening, thank you for coming to Parliament House and commemorating the life of Chris Nathanael. Thank you. We will continue with adjournment debates. Would anyone like to speak? Member for Karama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And can I just quickly say that I did meet Chris only once, probably 18 months ago. I purchased a little lemon tree because I've been struggling to grow them. He gave me advice, he gave me some fertiliser to take home, and it's now flowering. So thank you very much.